Hey, what's up guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Marincess deck profile. So I'm really excited for this one because we just got Marincess Great Bubble Reef, which is a really good link monster for the deck, and I am super excited for this deck because this deck is a really cool, beautiful deck to play around with, and it is a fantastic water deck if you guys are looking for a really good water deck. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell down there so you guys can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description because we got some really cool rewards for you guys, like getting a signed card sent to you, getting your name in the description of every single video, or even getting to request a deck profile every single month that you are a patron. So, without further ado, guys, let's get straight on into this. So, first off, we are playing 3 copies of Marincess Blue Tang. So, Blue Tang is basically the starter of the entire deck, because when she's normal or special summon, you can send a Marincess monster from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy yourself. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard as a material for the link summon of a water monster, you can excavate the top 3 cards of your deck. If you do, get to add 1 excavated Marincess card from your hand to your hand, and also you shuffle the rest into your deck, which is a really good effect to be able to do to add Marincess from your deck to your hand. And also just for using it as a material, which we have link 1 monsters, you can just normal summon this and then use its effect to send something into the grave, and then go off from there. Then we play 3 copies of this Marincess. Marincess is when she's normal summoned or special summoned, you can special summon 1 Marincess monster from your hand, except in defense position, except another copy of yourself. And then during your main phase, except the turn that she was sent to the graveyard, you can banish her from the grave and then target 1 Marincess spell or trap in your grave and add it back to your hand, which is a really good effect too, to be able to add spells or traps back to your hand. We play 3 copies of Marincess Seahorse. Seahorse is a really good monster. What she does is she lets you special summon her from your hand to a zone a Marincess link monster points to, which could be a blue slug or any of the other Marincess monsters that you're starting out with. And then during your main phase, except the turn she was sent to the graveyard, you can banish her and then special summon a water monster from your hand to a zone a link monster points to, which is really helpful. Then we play 2 copies of Marincess Mandarin. Mandarin is really good too because if you control 2 or more Marincess monsters while this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can target a link monster you control, special summon this card to a zone that monster points to, but banish it when it leaves the field, which is still pretty good to be able to special summon to your side of the field to get those additional plays off. Then I still play the Frog Engine in here, which is 3 copies of Swap Frog, which just lets you discard a water monster to special summon this card from your hand, and then when this card is summoned, you can send a level 2 or lower aqua monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is always going to be Dupe Frog or Ronin Totem, depending on which one you're playing, or which one you need to the graveyard at the particular time. And then you can add it back to your hand and to normal summon another frog monster, which is really good to be able to do that, to be able to get a lot of more plays out of it. Then we play 1 copy of Dupe Frog. Dupe Frog, when this card is treated as Death Frog while on the field, which is not really the pivotal thing. The pivotal thing about this card is when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a frog monster, except another copy of itself, or Dupe Frog, or a Frog the Jam, which is not even Frog the Jam anymore, I don't think. From your deck to your, or graveyard to your hand, which is really helpful. Then we play a single copy of Ronin Totem. Ronin Totem, you can banish a frog from your grave to special summon it, which is really helpful. And then a single copy of Sea Archiver. The Sea Archiver is really neat in this deck because you get to special summon it to a zone a link monster points to, and it's a water monster as well, which can really help out the deck. But you have to banish it when it leaves the field, which is not that big of a deal because you're basically just getting it for the material. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells, which we actually mainly play traps in this deck, which is kind of interesting. You wouldn't look at this deck and go, oh, traps, but it does. 3 copies of Call by the Grave, because Call by the Grave just stops our opponent from doing all sorts of hand traps. 1 copy of Foolish Burial to send our particular Marincess to the graveyard that we need to, or Ronin Totem to the graveyard if we need to. 1 copy of Terraforming to search our Battle Ocean. 1 copy of Monster Reborn just as an extender. 2 copies of Battle Ocean. Battle Ocean is really neat. If you guys don't know what this card does, it is a really neat card that basically has the ability that all Marincess monsters you control gain 200 attack, and also each one gains 600 attack for each Marincess equipped to them as well, which comes in really handy with the Wonder Heart. And then also it has the ability that you control a equipped to monsters you control in the extra monster zone that were link summoned using Marincess Crystal Heart as a material are unaffected by our opponent's card effects. And then when you link summon a Marincess monster from your extra deck, except during your damage step, you can equip up to 3 Marincess link monsters with different names to your graveyard to that monster, which is super cool because you can just link summon like Marincess Great Bubble Reef and then equip 3 monsters to it, and she gains 1800 attack, which is really good. And also she gains an additional 200 attack, so she goes all the way up to 4600 just with Battle Ocean on the field. But you just play it as a 2-up because it is searchable and easy to get to. And then we play 3 copies of Signet Mining, because Signet Mining is in here because this deck is a Cyverse deck. So Signet Mining is really cool because it lets you send this card from your hand to the graveyard to add a level 4 lower Cyverse monster from your deck to your hand, which is still really, really good to be able to search exactly what you need when you need it. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're playing quite a few traps in here, which is 3 copies of Marincess Wave. Marincess Wave is neat in here because what it does is if you control a Marincess Link monster, then you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and negate that face-up monster's effects until the end phase of the turn. And if you control a Link 2 or higher Marincess monster, all face-up monsters you currently control are unaffected by your opponent's card effects until the end phase of the turn. That's really good just to protect your Marincess monsters, which is really, 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 really good effect just to be able to protect them all. Then we play 3 copies of Dynamiscus. Dynamiscus is really good in here too, because what this card basically does is you discard a card from your hand to the graveyard to banish a card on the field, and then whenever you activate a trap or your opponent activates a trap, you can special summon this card from your graveyard back to your side of the field as a level 2 water monster, but banish it when it leaves the field. 3 copies of Solemn Strike because you just don't want to deal with your opponent's stuff. The Solemn Strikes are super neat in this deck because when your opponent special summons a monster or a monster effect that activates, you can pay 1500 and negate that effect or summon, which is really good. And then 3 copies of Solemn Strike. The Solemn Strike, or Solemn Judgments, the Solemn Judgments just say, hey, I'm going to say no to anything and everything, which is really neat. Now, you wouldn't, like I said earlier, you wouldn't imagine that this deck would play a lot of traps, but the traps come in really, 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 really handy in here because you're basically wanting to go second in this, or you're basically wanting to go first in this deck, set up like a Bubble Reef, and then set 2 or 3 and pass, and then go off the following turn, which is really, really, really helpful because you're going to negate the majority of your opponent's stuff. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into that extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Marincess Great Bubble Reef, which is the new monster out of Eternity Code that we got. The reason you play this card is once per turn during your standby phase, you can banish 1 water monster from your grave or face up from your field to draw a card. And then each time a monster is banished face up, this card gains 600 attack for each. And then during the end phase of this turn, you can send 1 water monster from your hand to the graveyard to special summon 1 of your banished Marincess monsters, and you only use your effect once per turn. That's really good because she can get really big really quick with Battle Ocean on the field and when you link summon into her, which is really, really, really helpful. You just link summon into this card, she automatically comes out at 46 with your Battle Ocean on the field because you're going to link climb from like a Blue Slug to a Coral Anemone to Marble Rock and then finally into this card, which is going to be able to have those 3 materials in graveyard to summon on to attach to her, which is really helpful. Then we play a single copy of Wonderheart. Wonderheart's really good and usually my go-to card because once per battle during the damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can quick effect special summon 1 of your Marincess monsters that were equipped to this card, and then also it cannot be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage from that battle. And the equip this special summon monster to this card during the end phase, and if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon to 1 Link 3 or lower Marincess from your graveyard, which can then get you into Bubble Reef, which Bubble Reef is kind of like the backup plan if Wonderheart gets destroyed, in my opinion. Then I played 2 copies of Marble Rock. Marble Rock is really good as a good climb into the rock climbing. But then you go from Marble Rock into either Bubble Reef or Wonderheart, which is depending on which one you need to go into. But you can target 1 Marincess card in your graveyard, except another copy yourself, and then add it to your hand. And then she also has the ability that once per turn, when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send 1 Marincess monster from your hand to the grave. And then for this battle, this card cannot be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage, which is pretty good. 2 copies of Coral Anemone. Coral Anemone lets you target a water monster with 1500 less attack in your graveyard and special summon it, which is really cool. Just lets you climb up into the next Marincess monster that you're going to go into, which is Marble Rock. But she also has the ability ability that if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, then you can target a Marincess in her grave and add it back to your hand, which is really helpful just to be able to summon another Marincess monster. To be able to add it to your hand. One copy of Crystal Heart. Crystal Heart is really helpful in here because it's used as a material for the Great Bubble Reef, and you usually don't summon it for any other reason, you just use it for the material. 3 copies of Blue Slug. Blue Slug is insane in this deck because it's your starter Link monster, and it just takes 1 monster to go into Blue Slug, which is really helpful. She has the ability that if this card is Link summoned, you get to target a Marincess monster in your grave and then add it back to your hand. So basically, whatever monster you use as a Link material, you can just immediately add it back to your hand, which is nice. 1 copy of Sea Angel. Sea Angel is really good because if this card is Link Summon, you get to add a Marincess spell from your deck to your hand, which is going to be Battle Ocean, which is why I play this card as a 1 of, because you don't really need it in more than one, because the only spell card that you play is Battle Ocean, and so you're just going to search that 1 card. Mistar Boy, because everything is a water in the deck, and so you play this card just to increase the attack points even more, which is helpful. Crusadia, Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax, because Avermax can give you that additional boost to just get over opponents' monsters, and it's really hard to get past when you're playing this card. 1 copy of Pegasus just to bounce monsters off the field, and a single copy of Totally Awesome because you can summon this card really easily off of Dynamiscus and your copies of your Toads, which is really, really helpful. It's just a part of the Toad engine essentially, and it's limited to 1 now, so you can only play 1. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a really fun deck. It's not as expensive as it was when it first came out. I think the most expensive card in the entire deck now is Coral Anemone. It's by no means a super budget deck. It's probably about a $150 deck, to be honest with you guys. But it's a super fun deck to play around with. And if you guys want to wait on it, it'll probably be even cheaper when the Megatins come out, because the majority of this deck is going to get reprinted probably in those Megatins in August, which is not going to be too long away anyway. So anyways, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad. Definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. It's a really fun deck that basically controls the board with traps and stuff like that. And I hope that you did enjoy this deck profile. Definitely check out the Patreon down in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you around, guys.